If there's one thing that people have asked me to talk about on Breakdown, it's the various comic-to-movie adaptations that have flooded the film scene in the past few years. I have largely been reluctant to do so. After all, this podcast is called Comic Book Breakdown. That's where my focus and my main love is at. I mean, I like movies, don't get me wrong. Who doesn't? But they aren't my passion. I also didn't want to interrupt whatever ongoing story I was breaking down during the podcast. I know that if I was a listener and I was knee-deep in the Secret 6 episodes, I wouldn't want a sudden one-shot talking about Avengers Endgame or Birds of Prey / Harley Quinn popping up in it. One of the things that Breakdown has taught me is to keep your narrative clean. Whatever your story is, focus on that, ignoring everything that doesn't push that narrative forward. So, up to this point, I've ignored comic book movies. But, now that I've got a YouTube channel backing me up, with unlimited upload space whenever I feel like it, I can totally add in random one-shots like this. So, please join me as I break down Bloodshot. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Movie Breakdown Bloodshot. One of the main reasons that I wanted to talk about Bloodshot was, quite honestly, because I don't think that a lot of people know that Bloodshot is a comic book movie. But it is. Bloodshot is a character from Valiant Entertainment, a publisher that gained popularity in the early 90s, went through kind of an inactive period, and then recently came back on the scene in 2014. Valiant had just kind of died when I started buying comics, so while I've never read their work, I am vaguely familiar with it. I have rooted through countless issues of Exo Manowar, Turok the Dinosaur Hunter, and Rye while exploring the dollar bins in comic shops or comic conventions. As such, all that I knew about Bloodshot was that his skin was alabaster white, he had a red circle on his chest, and he looked like a soldier. He's in physically good shape, typically armed with guns. Beyond that, I knew nothing about him. When rumors started going around the internet that Valiant was looking to create their own cinematic universe with their own properties, I was kind of confused. While Valiant has done well for themselves with their relatively recent relaunch, they aren't blowing people away either. It's not like Valiant is the third grossing publisher in America or something. I mean, would anyone care if they made movies? And how good could those movies be? Valiant as a company failed once, which to me indicates a lack of quality stories. But again, I didn't know jack squat about Valiant, or its characters, or any of its details, really. And how could I judge something that I had no experience with? Then the rumors started to gain more weight, and then Vin Diesel was cast as Bloodshot himself. Okay, now we had something. Vin Diesel may only have one acting setting, but that setting is a tough badass with a heart of gold, which is exactly the kind of character that he would need to bring to Bloodshot. Plus, Diesel is a well-liked actor overall, and people know who he is, so I could see him being a big enough name to bring in your casual moviegoers. That didn't sound bad to me. Then the trailer came out, and I had mixed feelings. On the one hand, it looks like a stereotypical action movie. The trailer straight up shows you that Vin Diesel was a soldier brought back by some corporation run by actor Guy Pearce, who is presented as both a savior and a villain in the trailer, and there's fighting and explosions and a pretty lady. Bloodshot, Hollywood's latest superhero. And that immediately ground my interest to a halt. Because the term superhero means a very specific thing to audiences. Most audiences hear superhero, and they think Batman, Superman, Iron Man, the Avengers. They don't think guy who looks mostly normal and whose power is basically to be a badass. Bloodshot is certainly a comic book, But it isn't a superhero comic book, and I would argue that this is not a superhero movie. And who the advertisers are selling this movie to is important. If they're aiming for the general public who watches the Marvel movies and loves them, then this does not fit that tone or concept. If they're aiming for comic fans in general, then they're showing a certain amount of disconnect, because comic fans would know that Bloodshot is a soldier, not a superhero. And if they got that wrong already, what else would they get wrong? My hackles had been raised, but I still wanted to see it for myself. I've always been open about checking out a new comic book, so I decided that I would remain open about seeing this movie. And I kind of loved it. It had some heart, it has an interesting character concept, the story is intriguing and engaging, it's got a good sense of humor, and not a stupid sense of humor, but a good one, and it looks good. The cinematography in Bloodshot is actually really pretty. There's this one fight scene, it's beautiful. I don't know that I'd say that Bloodshot is totally original in its concept, but it is one that fits in the world that's around us today and the level of technology that mankind has access to. If you, dear listener, have been on the fence about seeing Bloodshot, then I totally suggest that you go see it before I spoil it for you. Because beware, listener, here there be spoilers. Bloodshot stars Vin Diesel as Ray Garrison, a member of Delta Force who's rescuing hostages and killing terrorists in the Middle East. He returns to his base in Italy after a mission, meets up with his wife Gina, and they enjoy the town and each other. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more. Gina is concerned for the amount of damage that Ray takes in his missions. Not only was he shot in the abdomen on this mission, but his body is crisscrossed in scar tissue. Ray, however, appreciates the scars as they're proof that he always returns home to her. The next morning, Ray wakes up and Gina is gone. She's left a note saying that she's headed out to get them breakfast, and so Ray brushes his teeth to start the day. While doing so, he hears heavy footfalls outside of his room and realizes that they can't be his wife. 2 armed men burst into his room, but Ray handles them pretty well. He then takes off, worried about his wife, and bumps into a man in the hallway, who stabs Ray with a tranquilizer. His body goes numb, and Ray passes out. When he wakes up, he's tied to a chair inside of a meat locker. A radio starts to play the Talking Heads song, Psycho Killer, and a thin man enters the room. He's dressed super relaxedly, in sandals with socks, boxer shorts, a puffy jacket, and he slides on a beanie as he dances across the room to the beat of the song. This is Martin Axe, and he has some questions for Ray. He wants to know who tipped Ray's unit off about the hostage that he saved, and Ray refuses to answer. So, of course, Martin brings out Gina and some pressurized air. He demonstrates that the pressurized air will fire a 6-inch long metal rod when it's released, and that rod will punch through Gina's head if Ray doesn't answer his question. Now Ray cracks, responding that he doesn't know who tipped them off. He's a soldier, not part of the chain of command. He goes where he's pointed to and kill who he has to. He does not know. He will tell this guy anything else, but he can't answer this question. Martin then kills Gina. Ray rages in his seat, promising to kill Axe. Wherever he goes, whatever he does, he will not stop Ray. In fact, Ray says that Martin better kill him now just to save him the pain. And Martin actually takes this advice and shoots Ray in the head, which I was not expecting. Like, how many movies have I seen that have a villain spare the hero because of some stupid reason? Or have a last-minute rescue save the hero, but not in time to save his lady love? Everything up to this point was a pretty straightforward action movie story. And I have to say, it all works. Diesel works well as Ray. He's intense and focused during the action sequences, but he's all quiet smiles and playful banter when he's with his wife. When she died, I believed that Ray thought she was dead. Diesel absolutely sold me on that. Axe was a fun, if strange, villain. Another thing that I didn't mind, because at least that made him memorable, and I liked that he didn't waste any time in killing Ray. I hate a villain who gets distracted, or lazy, or forgets, or leaves the actual murder for a lackey, or whatever, because that's what the movie needed to have happen. Nope, not here. Axe just simply shoots him and moves on. Sometime later, Ray is brought back to life in a high-tech laboratory. There's some amnesia and disorientation on Ray's part here, but he's alive again. Dr. Emil Harding explains that he has been creating mechanical prosthetics for those in need. He himself has a robotic arm, KT has mechanical lungs, Dalton has mechanical legs, and Tibbs has cameras mounted on his chest to transmit video to his optic nerves. Harding and his company, Rising Spirit Tech, or RST, have been outfitting wounded warriors for years. But it is Ray who is his masterpiece. A dead soldier brought back to life, and one who is nearly impossible to wound. This was accomplished by replacing Ray's blood with biomechanical machines, nanites, who can repair any damage done to their host. The only trick is that Ray will have to recharge at some point, as the machines are expended with each recovery that they undertake, so eventually he will have to return to RST. Ray has a pretty hard time believing this at first. He has no memory of his life, and due to his squad's actions being classified, his body was donated by the military. RST has no record of who Ray was, how he died, and they've just told him that not only is he nearly indestructible, but that he has been brought back from the dead. This would throw anybody. And I like that. I like that Ray has total amnesia, not some partial amnesia bullsh where he remembers just the face of the woman that he loves, but nothing else. Nope, not here. We get a tabula rasa, and I can appreciate that. I even dig the explanation as to why RST doesn't know more about him, and it's just because his past is classified. It is such a simple explanation, but it's one that both the audience and Ray will buy. This is a simple economic thing that helps sell what Ray has woken up into so well, and it's just nice to see. Guy Pearce does a great job as Dr. Harding. He feels eager and genuine. He's excited to see his technology work, but he has little concern for Ray as a person. After all, his goal here is to revolutionize warfare and make a crap ton of money, not to make Ray feel good about where he's at in his life. Isa Gonzalez, who I didn't know that I knew as Darlin from Baby Driver and the mantis-armed robot lady in Battle Angel Alita, but there you go, plays KT, a former Navy SEAL, and she's very distant here at the start. She burned her lungs in her past, forcing her to rely on an artificial opening that is implanted around her clavicle. This forces the character to wear plenty of low tops so that she can breathe, and Gonzalez is certainly attractive enough that I'm not going to complain about that. Sam Hugan, who I had previously seen in the movie The Spy Who Dumped Me, plays Dalton, who we'll learn eventually is the a-hole of the group, and Alex Hernandez plays Tibbs, who is the quietest of the three. All three of them have powers that their tech enhancements give them demonstrated. Dalton, for example, can run like never before, Tibbs can look through spy eye cameras, and KT can close her breath opening and operate without oxygen for an extended period of time. This works from a storytelling standpoint because it immediately tells us what these people are capable of, but it also serves to further isolate Ray. While he may be full of nanites, he's also the most traditionally human-looking of the four. All of these people are bonded through not just shared trauma, but by having overcome their physical disabilities as well. Ray is the outsider. Even amongst these wounded warriors, he's still alone. Overwhelmed by all of this, Ray retreats to his room for a nap. And during that nap, he starts to have nightmares of Gina's death. He doesn't quite get the full picture, but he snaps awake when he punches the wall, and his fist goes through it. Ray heads down to the gym and tests his body, punching through a sandbag, cracking a cement pillar, and using 300-pound weights on either arm. The nanites don't just make Ray nearly impossible to kill, they've also made him super strong. Ray relaxes by sitting at the viewing window of the pool that is inside the gym and accidentally stumbles into KT training. She's wearing weights on her ankles and wrists, allowing her to perform kata while underwater. She runs through a set of the motions, then surfaces and chats with Ray, doing her best to comfort him and reassure him that despite what's happened to him, they can live good lives, and that he is part of the team. And, since he's part of the team, she suggests that they do a test on him. He's amnesic, right? So they need to find out what kind of alcohols he likes. The pair move to a lounge room and bust out some drinks, starting to relax and smile. But then, Psycho Killer comes on the radio, and Ray starts to have flashbacks. It's not so much that he sees his past, so much as he's actually reliving it, speaking his own dialogue out loud to a frightened KT. She tries to snap him out of it, but his mind refuses, so she summons medical aid. But before it can get there, Ray finishes his flashback and he remembers everything. He's got a man to kill. Ray puts together a pack of weapons, grabs a truck from the RST parking garage, and takes off into the night. Once Harding is awakened and learns of this, he isn't happy. Ray is his golden goose, the proof of concept that he needs to secure funding from any military that he can charge. He wants Ray back, now. So Harding contacts Ray through his nanites and tries to talk him down. Of course, Ray won't be stopped, locating Martin Axe as his nanites pour through the internet for him. Once Axe is found, Ray downloads what he needs to know how to pilot a plane, steals one of those, and goes after Axe. Now, here's the thing. None of this stuff is new. I mean, Wolverine can recover any damage done to him, while heroes like Oracle or the Vision can scour the internet in seconds. Josh Holloway, who you may know as Sawyer from the TV show Lost, starred in a TV show called Intelligence, in which he was able to connect to the internet mentally and was a spy and an all-around badass. Hell, The Matrix had people download combat manuals or learn weapons training by having them download those files directly into their brains. So, this isn't exactly a novel idea. There are probably dozens of other stories that exist with these concepts that I haven't and won't mention too. However, it is executed to a T. The only thing that I don't like about it is that Ray immediately searches for Martin Axe, but not his wife. And I mean, why would he? She's dead, he saw it happen, and I don't know, I think that I would. I would spend so much of my time on the internet seeing how much had changed since I died. We aren't given a timeline here, so I don't know if Ray died in the year 2000 and came back in 2020, or did he die in 2019 and was brought back in 2020, or did he die 2 days ago and was just brought back to life today? I don't know, we aren't shown. And I mean, that would really be my first concern when I came back to life. What had happened to my parents, to my in-laws, to my squad mates? Sure, I would absolutely go after Axe and want to kill him, but I would also familiarize myself with the lay of the land, especially if I had the internet in my brain. Watching Ray discover his super strength was a pretty fun scene. You could see him enjoying the newfound power, but still be confused by it and struggle with what this meant for him. And for a 52-year-old guy, I have to say, Vin Diesel is in great shape in this. I don't know if they digitized some of his body or what, but his arms are ripped. They look great. When Ray watches KT underwater, I would have expected this scene to be all about the TNA. It's a beautiful woman in a bathing suit. I mean, how could it not? But the suit that Gonzalez wears is more akin to a bodysuit, and while sure it is revealing, it's also not the micro-bikini that another movie would have had her wear. This scene is meant to indicate her grace, her sense of calm centeredness, and establish that she has combat training that she's still practicing with. Where Ray is an emotional wreck, unsure of what he is or where he's going to go from here, KT has accepted who she's become and is at peace with it. I won't lie, I was thrown by the use of Psycho Killer in the drinking scene. Not because it could potentially trigger Ray, which it did, but what are the odds? This is a lounge in a corporate building, so it's either playing a radio station or an internally generated playlist that someone had to curate, and I don't know, I don't feel like I randomly hear Psycho Killer all that often. Maybe that says something about the quality of my life, and that there is a clear need to hear Psycho Killer more often, but still, this feels just like too much of a coincidence for me. Ray then goes to... crap, I forgot where. Somewhere in Europe, I want to say Prague, and the Wikipedia page tells me that they did do some filming in Prague, so I'm going to say that he's in Prague, where he finds Martin X being transported through town as part of a 5-car convoy. Something has Martin spooked, and he isn't taking chances with his security. The convoy enters a tunnel and finds a semi-truck driving in the opposite lane. They aren't worried about it at first, until the truck turns, slamming into the lead car and rolling onto its side. This throws its cargo of flour everywhere, coating the road, obscuring the windshields of the surviving cars, and cutting off the tunnel. Why the convoy doesn't back up and turn around, I will never know. Even if this road is the only road to wherever they were going, escaping from the situation would be my first priority, and leaving the tunnel just seems like the smartest way to do it. At least to me. To these mercenaries, though, their first step is to investigate. They confirm that Car 1 is dead and pinned, and find that the truck's cab is empty. The driver is gone. The mercenaries pop flares, filling the tunnel with red, and the whole scene just looks gorgeous. I love how the director and cinematographer handled this set and the action sequence that follows. Naturally, this whole thing is a trap, and Ray proceeds to pick off the soldiers, demonstrating exactly what he can do in the field. We get a mix of good tactical combat and some stupid, cocky action movie moments, which is a mix that I'll take over just plain stupid, cocky action movie moments. We are visibly shown that when Ray is wounded, whether by gunfire or explosion, that the nanites that make him up literally come back to him. Pools of blood come to life, spiral through the air, and re-enter his body, repairing any damage done. This leads to some really cool shots, like when his face gets shot and we see the damage, and it repairs in real time as he continues to fight. I don't care who you are, that is dope. All of this also makes Ray's heart glow, as the nanites produce heat from doing so much repair work. So a lot of these shots are just black, blue, and red, with a dull red glow coming from Ray's chest, like you can see the ribs under his skin. This scene just looks cool to me. The downside is that we get some stupid stuff. Like, sure, his face heals from the shot he gets, but it takes time as the nanites must move back to his body and then repair the damage. But when Ray gets shot in the ankle, he lifts that ankle in pain, looks at the car in front of him, and then uses his wounded leg to super kick the car into his assailant. We're shown that pain still affects Ray, this is why he lifts the leg. But there's no way that the wound closed already, so kicking that car would have hurt like a Subanovich, and there is nothing to indicate that it does anything in that sequence. While Ray is killing the mercenary bodyguards protecting Martin X, Axe calls someone on his cell phone. This is Nick Barris, and the conversation indicates that they, Axe and Barris, knew someone was coming after him. Axe is scared out of his mind. The last people who got murdered got, super murdered, and he is pretty sure that he is next. Barris, however, isn't worried about it. After all, he isn't there, and they did hire the best bodyguards that they could. If Axe sits tight and listens to them, then he'll probably be fine. And to Axe's credit, he actually does. He whines about it and he cries about it, but rather than getting out of the car and running, or forcing Ray to hunt him down or calmly shoot him in the back, which is honestly what I was expecting, he does as his mercenary leader tells him and stays in the car. They've got bulletproof glass, which is demonstrated when Ray unloads a clip into it to no avail, so he improvises. Ray pulls off the grenades of a nearby mercenary body, presses it against the window, and then braces himself. His super strength keeps him from moving, and his nanites keep him from dying when the grenades go off in his face. But they worked. The glass is shattered, exposing Axe, and Ray kills him quickly. Having accomplished his goal, Ray leaves the city and meets up with Dalton, Tibbs, and KT in a nearby field. Dalton approaches the Jeep that Ray had stolen and starts to douse it in gasoline, preparing to torch it to cover his tracks. Ray tells KT that he would have gone back to RST on his own. Harding didn't need to send them after him. But they figured that he would need a sympathetic shoulder after what he just went through. Despite having killed the murderer of his wife, Ray just feels kind of empty. I mean, sure, Axe is dead, but so is his wife. Still, that hasn't changed. Killing Axe didn't really make anything better. So he sighs and declares that he's done with this, referring to killing people. KT nods and she agrees. She's done too. Dalton sets the Jeep alight and they return to RST. Despite having killed his target and a bunch of armed men, Ray took a lot of damage and his nanites are nearly depleted. He needs to plug in, recharge, and rest up, which is exactly what he does, laying down in the charging cradle that his nanites use. Which is when we get the twist. Dalton walks in, and as Ray starts to chat with him, Dalton finally taps a button on the tablet that interfaces with the charger. The tablet removes Ray's control of the nanites, leaving him physically frozen, but mentally awake. He can hear Dalton, but he can't do anything to him. Dalton then explains that they keep doing this to him. They fill him with nanites, adjust his memories to implant a new target, he kills the absolute crap out of them, and just as Ray is feeling good and settling into his new life, they strip it all away. And he never questions them. No matter how many times they've done it, he never catches on. He's never even checked to see if his wife is actually dead, and that's the moment that Dalton likes the most. Seeing the expression change on Ray's face as he realizes how screwed he really is, how helpless he is in the face of what he's up against, and then he deactivates Ray. This is the part of the concept that I really enjoy. Like I mentioned before, we've seen characters connected to computers or the internet before, but rarely do we see someone manipulate those characters using that connection. But RST is literally setting up scenarios in Ray's mind, winding him up, and then setting him loose on the target of their choice. This mission with Axe isn't even the first mission he's done. It's like the fourth person that Ray has killed. The horror on his face as Dalton monologues is great. Again, Vin Diesel was perfectly cast in this role, and he does a great job with it. Dalton comes off as a really twisted sadist. I kind of get the feeling that he's jealous of the physical power that Ray has access to and how useful he is to RST. He really delights in watching Ray rendered helpless, delights in watching his mind squirm as he twists that emotional knife. Dalton knows that Ray is an excellent killing machine, but that's all that he sees Ray as a tool to be used as they see fit. Dalton clearly thinks that he's better, superior to Ray, because he's free, where Ray is basically enslaved. We don't really get to see where this comes from for Dalton, which I think is a shame as it keeps him pretty one-note throughout the movie, but I can't lie, actor Sam Heughan delivers that one note perfectly. It's fun to hate Dalton, and I kinda think that that's the point. While Dalton is gloating over Ray, Dr. Harding confronts KT about her little "I'm done too" line when they picked Ray up. Harding says that everything that they do, everything that they've done, requires them to stick to the script perfectly every time. Everything that they do is perfectly set so that Ray will kill who they want killed and maintain his trust. Little ad-libs like that aren't needed, and they certainly aren't helpful. KT balks at this, disgusted at how they're manipulating this man's grief and anger. He's a wounded soldier like the rest of them, and he deserves better than this manipulation and pain. Harding, however, argues that he isn't a person, he is a weapon, their weapon, and the perfect weapon. They can't risk ruining anything about this, not when they're so close. So, how about she resets his room like she's supposed to, so they can get him set for the next mission? At first, KT refuses, and so Harding takes control of her breathing apparatus, essentially choking her. She is alive and can breathe only at his leisure. That means that he deserves her respect, and he expects it. So she'll set up his room, right? Once she nods, Harding releases the controls, and KT can breathe again. This scene also serves to explain why RST is killing these men. Ray's targets are former RST employees who helped to develop the programs and technology that now empower and control Ray, and that means they are worth a lot of money to RST and Harding. Harding isn't willing to risk anyone else knowing how this tech works or coming up with countermeasures for it. He doesn't need any competition, so he's killing them before they can become a threat. With the plot twist having been activated, the movie has to do a lot of work fast. It needs to explain how everything that we've seen so far is really a manipulation. It needs to sell us on how that manipulation works, and it needs to showcase who the people that we've been following actually are, as opposed to who they've been pretending to be. These two scenes, with Dalton/Ray and Harding/KT, need to do a lot of work fast, so the filmmakers edited them together. Dalton reveals what's going on to Ray, while KT confronts Harding as he's building the new scenario for Ray. This allows us, as the audience, to know that Dalton is telling the truth. We are seeing that truth play out elsewhere in the building, so we know that he isn't lying. And we need to buy into this concept for the film to work. I like that while Dalton looks down on Ray because he's being manipulated, KT actually sympathizes with Ray for the same reason. This highlights how different KT and Dalton are without even putting them into the same room. It also explains some small things in the character's earlier behaviors. KT feels guarded and distant for a lot of her scenes, and it's because she's done this with Ray before, and she's starting to feel guilty about it. Dalton, on the other hand, is dismissive, grimacing at Ray with disdain as he thinks Ray is a fool. The only thing that I don't really like about this is that the trailer showed us this turn outright. The trailers for Bloodshot clearly show Ray interacting with characters like KT, Dalton, and Harding as friends or allies, but then they also show him fighting Dalton or confronting Harding for his manipulation. So the trailer told us really quickly that either RST was evil and would try to harm Ray, or that Ray was being manipulated, which would then bring him into conflict with them. It does go by pretty quickly, but it's there, and if you were paying attention, it broadcasts this twist before you're even in the theater. The movie then shows us the process of editing Ray's hostage rescue scenario as the employees and programmers of RST work to make it more memorable, or more real, to Ray. We learn that one of the RST employees, named Eric, helped design the scenario, and he's largely used as comedic relief, allowing the rest of the cast to remain focused. RST edits in Nick Barris's face, the guy that Martin Axe called before his untimely death, and we fast forward through Ray being woken up again, his situation explained, the discovery of his powers and his friendship with KT, and suddenly Psycho Killer being played in the lounge isn't a coincidence, it is an outright manipulation and makes a lot more sense, and eventually Ray makes it to England, where Barris is hiding out. Barris, however, isn't willing to go quietly. He has a large compound guarded by 18 men and a very special countermeasure. Now that Axe is dead, Barris isn't willing to take any chances. Once Ray starts to kill people in his building, he has Walter Wiggins, a twitchy, nervous computer programmer, brought up from the basement along with the case. Wiggins is taken to Barris's office, where he tells Wiggins to set the device up. Wiggins nervously stammers, unprepared for this kind of pressure and honestly scared of dying, but he does so. All the while, Ray is moving through Barris's building, killing his men with ease. Once the device is set up, Wiggins is sent back to his basement, and Barris is left to pray. RST, having hacked into Barris's security cameras, can see that device and Wiggins. Eric, RST's lead programmer, recognizes Wiggins right away. Wiggins is like god tier at coding. In fact, Eric actually used some of Wiggins' open source stuff in the design of the nanites programming. That's how good he is. Harding is outraged at this, knowing that Wiggins now presents a possible weakness in the plan. If Wiggins was so good, then why did RST hire Eric and not him? Eric quietly replies that they tried to, but Wiggins said no, the implication being that Wiggins wouldn't have morally approved of this job. Eric then identifies the device in the case as an EMP, capable of shutting down all electronics for miles around. If that thing goes off, it will shut down the nanites in Ray's body and free him from RST's control. Luckily for RST, the device is still charging as Ray approaches Barris. Barris tries to talk Ray down or redirect him, but like with Axe, Ray is too focused and kills Barris before the device can finish charging. He does not, however, get far enough away from the device before it finishes charging, and Wiggins activates it, blacking out Ray, the building, and the surrounding area. RST's satellites are dead. And so is Ray. Obviously, that's not for long. Ray has died before, and it sure didn't stop him then. Wiggins dragged Ray down to his basement fortress of solitude, laid him on the metal frame of a bed, and used a car battery to, essentially, jumpstart his nanites. This resurrects Ray, who is finally alive and active, and free of RST's control. Wiggins explains that he is a coder supreme, and how he freed Ray of RST's control, and basically the whole situation. Remember, Ray doesn't know any of this because RST reset his memories. Thankfully, Wiggins does this quickly, so we aren't forced to endure another expositional info dump about Ray's situation. Wiggins had heard about someone killing off former RST employees, which is what led Barris to hiring him, but then Barris wouldn't let Wiggins leave either. In order to get out, Wiggins needed Barris dead, Ray needed to be free of RST's control, so Wiggins figured this would be a win-win scenario for both of them. That isn't how Ray sees it, though. Now that he fully comprehends his situation, the first thing that he wants to do is see if his wife is still alive. Before he can get on the internet, though, Wiggins stops him. The nanites will connect to the internet through RST's servers, allowing them to take control of him again. Ray pauses. Then he cuts his hand and collects a small amount of his blood nanites in a glass and hands it to Wiggins. He needs to figure out a way to keep that from happening. Until then, Wiggins pulls out a cell phone from a lead-lined fridge, which protected it from the EMP. Ray takes the phone, Wiggins points him at an old-school car with no electronics in it, so it drives, and one Google search later, Ray heads out to find Gina Garrison. RST, who has moved a new satellite into position over Barris's building, spots the car leaving. Harding dispatches Dalton and Tibbs to retrieve Ray, while KT gets to find Wiggins. Dalton is excited to finally prove himself superior to Ray, while Tibbs is more concerned with collecting their ally. He's one of us, Tibbs argues, but Dalton does not care. All of that works pretty well for me. Using the EMP to disconnect Ray from RST's control is smart, although I won't lie, Wiggins can be pretty annoying. He's like either 60% annoying and 40% entertaining, or 60% entertaining and 40% annoying at the drop of a hat. Sometimes he's funny, sometimes he's frustrating, but actor Lamorne Morris gives the role 100%. While he was stumbling to tell Barris how to work the EMP, he actually wasn't stumbling. He was stalling. Wiggins' plan here all along was for Ray to kill Barris, which would then free Wiggins, and then Wiggins could free Ray. Most of the time, techies or tech heads or tech geeks are presented as emotionally or socially stunted, the only thing that they're good with being computers or programming. And for the most part, Wiggins does fall into that stereotype, talking and joking with himself through most of his scenes, but his ability to manipulate Barris and Ray into freeing him shows an intelligence, a cunning, that we don't often get to see in this type of character, so I really appreciate seeing it here. I don't like Ray collecting his nanites in a cup, though. Up to this point in the movie, every time that Ray has taken damage, the nanites/flesh/blood fly away from his body, then stop in midair and pull themselves back into Ray's body. So if he cut his hand and let some blood drop, that blood would animate and move back into his body. We are shown puddles of blood doing this during the fight against Axe's mercenaries in the tunnel, despite Ray having moved away from those puddles. So why do these nanites stay in the cup when their basic programming should be moving them back into Ray? This is clearly just a plot hiccup, and it's still not a terribly egregious one, but for a movie that has been delivering pretty solidly on its plot points so far, it frustratingly stands out. Ray heads into town. I think it was Essex in England, so how lucky for him that Gina now lives near Barris's base of operations. That's great. He does find Gina, knocks on the door, and is pleased as punch to see his wife. But she is not his wife. Not anymore. They split up, over 5 years ago. Gina wasn't able to cope with Ray coming home torn up. Ray is confused by this, yeah, sure, he was torn up, but he came home. He always came home. That was his promise to her. But eventually that wasn't enough for Gina. She wanted him to stay home, not come home. They divorced, and now she's remarried with 2 kids. And so Ray takes off in pain and confusion. Even his relationship with Gina was a lie, another thing manufactured by RST to motivate him. This scene kills it. I had figured that either Gina had never married him or that Gina didn't exist at all by this point in the story, so I was pretty sure that something was going to be up going into this scene. But seeing the confusion on Ray's face really hurt, and Gina does a great job being firm about how their relationship failed, but still being happy to see an old friend that she did care for, but also was scared of a man who was clearly not thinking straight. Actress Tallulah Riley does a great job managing a pretty fast-paced barrage of emotions well. It's the only scene she has other than the lovey-dovey dream sequence that RST designed for Ray, and I think that it works well. I was super impressed here. The only thing that really didn't impress me is that when Ray finds Gina on his phone, he searched for Gina Garrison, and the phone shows Gina Garrison and then has the little location pointing to her address. However, Gina clearly remarried, and she clearly has kids, and she straight up says that she was remarried, so did she really keep her ex-husband's name? You would really think that if Gina Garrison had come up, you would have been more likely to find a Facebook page, or an Instagram account, or some other form of social media, which would have then shown you what her new name is, which would have blown the whole situation to Ray. Obviously, this is why the writers didn't do that, because if Ray was standing there going, look, I did a search for my wife, Gina Garrison, and it says Gina Carolfo, or whatever her real last name is, she must have dumped me and remarried, but that's impossible, and you would have gotten a completely different reaction going into this. I do also appreciate Ray not pushing this to the point where, like, he gets violent and they need to call the cops or something like that. Again, I feel like that's an action story trope that happens too often, and it could easily have happened here. So I appreciate that Ray goes, I have seriously misunderstood the situation. I am going to back off and regroup. Very nice. Dalton and Tibbs catch up to Ray while he's in town. Dalton pursues on foot, naturally, while Tibbs fires several helicopter-mounted cameras into the sky, dons a helmet view screen, and then pursues on a motorcycle. The sequence is very fast-paced, with Ray smashing through concrete walls, bouncing off of cars, and dodging tranquilizer darts. It's fast and intense, and it's just a good time. Dalton finally thinks that he's gotten ahead of Ray by the end, but rather than flee from Dalton's fire, Ray charges into him and knocks him down, into the street, where he pins him. A truck then drives over both of them, which is an experience that Ray can shake off pretty easily. Dalton, however, is bruised, battered, and his mechanical legs are torn off. Before Ray can kill him, though, Tibbs drives up behind Ray and stabs an electrical spike into his back, knocking him down and out. KT, on the other hand, catches up with Wiggins as he leaves the hotel that he fled to after Ray left Barris's compound. He's hired a lot of guards, and he is right to be scared, but as he passes by the alluring KT, she asks him if he could light one of her cigarettes. Ever the gentleman, Wiggins does so and starts to flirt with KT. The smoke from the cigarette contains some kind of knockout compound, and he quickly drops, allowing KT to dispatch the guards. KT's fighting style kind of resembles the Black Widow's fighting style, with lots of fast, sharp strikes, lots of kicks, and swinging around dudes' body to throw them around kind of thing. She uses an extendable metal baton as her main weapon, dispatching the guards without killing them. Yes, she does have a job to do, and yes, she will do it, but she won't kill for Harding or RST, and that's something that I really like. Everyone comes back together at the RST building. Harding meets with Ray in a neural meeting space, basically a digital space where they can chat without Ray being physically active and willing to harm Harding. Harding explains his motivation, which is getting that money, and tries to sell Ray on being a programmable super soldier slave. He argues along the lines of, you have the perfect life here in your fake memory dreamscape, there's a woman you love, you're fighting to save lives and make the world a safer place, man. Why can't you be happy with that? And of course Ray can't be happy with that. People need to be able to make their own decisions, to be free to be whatever they want to be. Harding argues that all Ray Garrison ever wanted or was good at was killing people. I mean, he was so good at it that it clearly drove a wedge between him and his wife. This is a man who chose murdering people over his wife. This is what you do. And look at him now. Ray is more dangerous than ever. He is perfected. But this line of argument enrages Ray even more. He didn't choose to be a dangerous killing machine. He was made into one by Harding. He wants to stop, and Harding is denying him that right. Realizing that he will never get Ray to agree to this, Harding leaves the projector system and orders a new program for Ray. KT returns to RST and reports that she failed to capture Wiggins. Obviously, we know that this isn't true, but Harding does not. His focus has been on Ray all this time, so while he's disappointed, he isn't terribly surprised. Barris should have been the last mission for Ray, but with KT's failure, Wiggins will have to be the last. While the RST programming team begins to rewrite the scenario, KT gives Wiggins remote access to RST's computers, and set up in his hacker van, Wiggins goes to work, trying to undo RST's programming as they're writing it. KT then goes to the holo projector booth and enters Ray's mind, encouraging him to fight the programming. Harding quickly realizes that KT has betrayed him and tries to close off her breathing device again. But Wiggins has taken control of it, allowing KT to act freely. The actions of Wiggins and KT free Ray, allowing KT to focus on destroying RST's servers and computer banks. Harding orders Dalton and Tibbs to kill Ray, so they suit up. Dalton dons a pair of robotic battle arms that go over his shoulders, giving him 4 arms, 2 of which are super strong metal ones. Tibbs, on the other hand, puts on a bunch of combat armor and arms himself with knives, prepared for hand-to-hand combat. There is a huge confrontation between the three. It's your classic big climax fight, and while there is some wonky CG during it, overall, I feel like it works well. Dalton's extra limbs allow him to move around like Dr. Octopus, giving him a degree of mobility and power that Ray just doesn't have. Tibbs is an extra bit of chaos, essentially there to distract Ray so that Dalton can move in for the stronger, more effective blows. Ray, however, just recovers from the damage, again and again, and while this does deplete his nanite count, he is still standing at the end of the fight, while Dalton and Tibbs are not. The three battle atop a falling elevator, and Ray uses it to crush Dalton. Which is great, like, good job everyone, the lackeys are down. But that still leaves Harding, and Ray has taken so much damage during the fight that his nanites are overclocked. His body is heating up and burning them out. If he doesn't stop fighting, he is going to die. For realsies this time. For some reason, this overclocking turns Ray's eyes red, or bloodshot, and his skin turns pale white. Now outside, after the elevator battle, Ray throws one of Dalton's arms at Harding's getaway car, disabling it and forcing the Doctor into a confrontation. Harding arms himself with a grenade launcher, maybe? A rocket launcher? I'm not exactly sure what it is, but whatever it is, it fires some mighty powerful explosives at Ray. He takes the first one, his cloud of nanites all moving back into his body and keeping him walking forward. Harding doesn't want to destroy Ray, but he will if he has to. He puts another round in and fires, but this time the nanite cloud catches the round, peeling off its outer layers. The nanites finish repairing the damage done to Ray, and he moves in, grabbing Harding, whose own mechanical arm latches onto Ray's throat. That last bit of healing drained the nanites. In moments, Ray will die without them. But he's okay with that. Ray opens his hand, revealing the core of the explosive that Harding fired at him. He drops it, and it detonates, killing them both. So the climax and final confrontation here in Bloodshot happen very quickly and with lots going on. Wiggins ends up doing a hack battle against RST's Eric that's largely used to deflate the situation. They're sitting at computers, typing and making sarcastic remarks while Ray battles for his life and KT betrays the closest thing she's had to friends for who knows how long. I would argue that it works, that there's just the right amount of levity here to keep you chuckling while allowing the serious characters to do all of the serious things. I'm glad that KT was finally able to fight back against RST's control, and it's her allying with Wiggins and playing Harding that really allows Ray to be saved at all. However, most of her scenes here are just her walking around and throwing tear gas grenades. Remember, she can close her device and not breathe for extended periods of time. How could Harding close it and basically choke her while she can choose to close it and not get choked, though? I have no idea, and I'm still fuzzy on why this happens. Part of the point of the underwater kata scene was to demonstrate that KT doesn't need to breathe traditionally. She can operate without air, but then how can you choke her to death? Another small problem, but this one sticks out more after the choking scene earlier. I would have liked to have seen KT involved in more combat, perhaps have her fight Tibbs while Ray fought Dalton. Ray's battle is all over the place, like I said, but overall it works. I do like that Ray was the only person not concerned with surviving this fight. He was willing to die to kill Harding, just as he was willing to die on every other mission he took. That focused drive is what made Ray Garrison such an unstoppable fighter, not the nanites. They just took what he already did and just leveled him up. There's also some poetic justice, in my mind, that Ray burns out the one thing that allows RST to control him in order to finally kill Harding and destroy RST. It's kind of beautiful. That death, however, doesn't last either. Ray wakes up in an RV and finds a much better dressed Wiggins having resurrected him. Again. But this time, Ray is 100% free of RST's control and of the need to recharge. Ray is a free man, and he can do whatever he wants now. Ray exits the RV and finds KT nearby. She tries to apologize for her role in manipulating him, but he stops her. Ray is just glad to be alive and free, and, after all, she helped him in the end. That's all that he needs to know. After a moment of quiet peace and some kind words, the pair climb into the car attached to the RV, and they drive off into the sunset. So the ending, much like Bloodshot's composite parts, isn't new either. I told my friends upon seeing Bloodshot's initial trailer that one of the main problems that I saw with the movie is that it wasn't going to be new to anyone. The concepts presented here would have been very new in 1990 or 1992 when Bloodshot made his comic book debut. I think the Ghost in the Shell anime was really the only other pop culture presence that asked people to contemplate the power of computers and how they could eventually be used to affect the human mind. Blade Runner certainly came close, asking what the difference between something that thinks it's human and an actual red-blooded human is, but, like I mentioned above, this kind of concept has been explored a lot more in the 30 years that have passed since its introduction. Movie adaptations of things like Ghost in the Shell and Battle Angel Alita both suffered for this very same reason. They're just 30 years too late to be innovative anymore. They can certainly look good, and I did enjoy both of those films, but they aren't revolutionary like the animes that they were based upon were originally. Bloodshot suffers the same problem of being a competently told story with some good character work and an intriguing storyline, but of doing nothing new with it. And if the trailer didn't show you where the plot was going, the movie certainly does. I'd still argue that this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Bloodshot does everything that it does very well, and delivers ultimately on a satisfying movie experience. Vin Diesel is perfectly cast as Ray Garrison, managing to sell how badass and competent he is, while still showing enough vulnerability and openness to make his emotional journey work. The supporting cast does their jobs well, and I'm glad that KT did not end up being a love interest for Ray, which I was really scared of. The movie certainly looks good, and the parts set in Budapest, Prague, and Italy look gorgeous. This must have been a blast to film overseas. I'm totally jealous. I would like to point out that this is now the second time that Guy Pearce has modified wounded warriors and himself with experimental tech in a bid to revolutionize and privatize war in a comic book-inspired movie. Please, Mr. Pearce, you do this kind of character well, I will admit it. But Iron Man 3 was enough, and Bloodshot is now more than enough. Stretch your wings some more. My understanding is that Bloodshot is Valiant Entertainment's opening salvo into their own cinematic universe. I don't know if that's still the plan or not. I'm going to guess that Bloodshot's potential profits are going to play a big role in whether they push forward or not. But if it is, then I do think that this is a good starting point. I would love to see what Valiant would do with Bloodshot moving forward, and what other new characters they could introduce. I got the same kind of kick out of watching this movie that I get out of discovering a new comic book, but I'm not really looking to expand my collection into a whole new company, if I can help it. I do kind of want to get some Bloodshot comics, just so I can compare and contrast them, but I've got collections that I'm working on now to finish first, and there's no reason to go crazy on Bloodshot. I hope that you all enjoyed this breakdown of Bloodshot. I'll admit, writing this up took me way longer than I expected, like 5 hours of work. I could have written almost a full episode of an actual comic book breakdown episode in that time. So if you enjoyed this, and you want to see me do more with other upcoming comic book films, let me know by either leaving a like or a comment. My wife and I love going to the movies, and we are super pumped for the upcoming Black Widow movie, and I would love to talk about it with you all. But I would also like to stay on my release schedule with the actual podcast, though, so I don't want to put a lot of focus here if no one cares, and I still don't want to interrupt the schedule for Breakdown with random movie episodes. Otherwise, a new episode of Comic Book Breakdown will drop this Thursday, and I'll see you all there. Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.